Well, good evening, everyone. Again, thank you, Kian, for the warm introduction. I'm very excited to be here and to help you work through some different things that we will be discussing, including outlines. So I'm going to share my screen. Can we see my screen? Everything looks good?
Yes.
Perfect.
Yeah,
Great. Well, I am going to go into the slideshow then. So welcome today. Today, we are going to be talking about outline creation and organization development for application essays. Basically, we are talking about the building blocks or the foundations for our essays so that we can plan them out and feel successful as we write them. So why are we having this workshop? Spark Prep and Bloom Global Education have a wonderful essay writing contest every year that really helps students practice their college writing skills, gain insight into the areas in which they might need to develop those writing skills, and as a plus, you get to earn some fantastic prizes, such as first place with a certificate, $100, and a voucher worth 25 million Vietnamese dong. Second place and third place, the certificates and prize amounts are listed here. And basically, there's more information on Spark Prep and Bloom Global Education's websites if you are interested. At the end of this presentation, my colleagues and I will be more than willing to answer any questions you might have about the contest, its details, specifics, and also writing the actual essay. So when you approach a college application, there are three major themes and six aspects, or we can call them attributes. There are leadership and character, academics, and growth and values. As you can see from this lovely little chart, today we're going to be focusing on the essays and growth and values. It's important to realize that when you are outlining an application essay, growth and values are your guiding principles. They are what help you. Oh, I see someone has raised their hand. Just to make it clear, we will have a Q&A section at the end of this presentation. So please make sure to keep all of your questions in the front of your mind so that we can return to them. I appreciate your patience. So based on growth and values, what is growth? Well, for college admissions coaches, growth is an upward trajectory. Basically, it's your personal narrative showing that you have grown or developed as a student or a human being. So some of the things that you could discuss potentially in an essay include past failures and how you learned from them, challenges you have faced, how you have changed or developed as a human being, and or moments of leadership, or times when your actions had positive and meaningful consequences. So with that in mind, again, growth is looking to see where you started and more importantly, where you're ending. What are values? For these values that admissions coaches are looking at in essays, they're looking for things such as important moments in your life that changed your perspective. Values or beliefs that you feel are integral to who you are as a person and your identity. This could include things such as cultural heritage, your gender, activities that you are passionate about, such as art, music, travel, sports, and your family. Basically, things that mean a lot to you and that are part of who you are as a human being. So now that we have a little bit more of an understanding of growth versus values, let's look at some possible example topics or subjects that we can discuss in these types of essays. One of them being, in terms of growth topics, practicing piano in order to perform on stage. This displays your hard work as a skill. Again, that upward trajectory. Studying a topic that was not taught in school or completing studies or research on your own. This shows your initiative and your curiosity as an individual. Discussing how you struggled to stay focused during the pandemic, but have since learned how to cope in school. This shows your resilience. These are different forms of growth topics that basically show you have had some achievement or some accomplishment. This is growth, or again, that upward trajectory towards success. So remember that essays that are focused on growth often showcase students overcoming challenges or gaining new skills, such as these example topics show. Next, you can have an essay regarding values. Some examples for this kind of topic include standing up for what you believe in a difficult situation, such as with bullying. This displays your bravery and leadership skills. You could be discussing charity or volunteer work that you are deeply committed to. This displays philanthropy, empathy, and kindness, basically how giving you are of your time and energy to others, and or expressing your appreciation of your culture and traditions. This showcases your cultural pride and is something that is unique to the wonderful human beings in Vietnam. So I think that's something that is one I see frequently students writing about, is showcasing their cultural pride. Remember that essays on values focus on a student's belief systems and focus on explaining who they are at their core, fundamentally. So when we approach an essay, there are three main tools that at Spark Prep and Bloom Global Education we use to sort of package it all up into one clean, cohesive essay. First, we have to discuss content, the what you write about and why you write about it, the structure, and the style, or your voice, style, and technique. The reason that we do these tools and we put them together is because we understand that each essay is going to be a piece of you as a student, and that's what we're trying to showcase. So in this workshop particularly, we're going to be working with content. This tool is what the outline focuses on, is deciding what you're going to write about and, more importantly, why. So when we approach an academic essay, especially in a college application, before the outline, I want you to remember the 3 R's, which are read. Read all of the given prompts that you will be answering carefully. Consider which ones stand out to you. Many colleges give you multiple prompts to choose from, but do not require you to write every single one. They want you to showcase your skills and who you are as a human being to the best of your ability, hence why they give you choices. And remember that the prompts are asking specifically about you. We will discuss this more as we go through the presentation. After you've read and reread the prompts, the second R is to reflect. Think about any experiences or topics that could align with the growth or the values of the essay prompt. Consider the content or the actual information that's going to comprise your essay. And finally, revisit. Consider whether or not a personal experience or prompt align with one another. If they don't necessarily connect, you might have to revisit this topic and or the prompt and try to find one that fits more successfully. Now, if you're having particular difficulty deciding on a topic to write about or choosing a specific topic to commit to, then it's time for you to outline. So, before we get into actually working through our outlines, I think it's important to show you this year's annual essay contest prompts. So the first one being, does an increasingly interconnected world help or hinder human thriving? Discuss your position. And tell us a story from history or from your own life about a time when a little thing made a big difference. What should we learn from this story? Finally, the third prompt, tell us your favorite word, either real or fabricated or imagined, and explain why you like it. So the first thing to do when approaching these prompts is to consider whether they're discussing those 2 major facets of the essay, growth or values. If we look at these again, let's start to think about what they discuss. So, does an increasingly interconnected world help or hinder human thriving? Discuss your position. This is a value. This is not looking necessarily for your growth, that upward trajectory, but much more what your belief system is regarding an interconnected world. So it's a value-based prompt. Number 2, tell us a story from history or from your own life about a time when a little thing made a big difference. What should we learn from the story? This could go either way. If, let's say, there is a time in your life when a little thing made a big difference, maybe the encouragement of a teacher to help you keep going and get better in class. That's growth. That is looking at upward trajectory. It could be value when maybe someone in your family told you that they loved you after not saying it for a while. That shows you the value of showing affection or being connected to your family, etc. And then 3, finally, tell us your favorite word, either real or fabricated, and explain why you like it. This is an interesting one. This can be a very creative topic because it's unique in the sense that you're focusing on a word that will hopefully connect back to who you are as a person. This again could be growth or value. If your favorite word is success, you obviously can see how that upward trajectory could be laced into this essay. If your favorite word is mother or brother or friend, you could see how it could go into value and this idea of connection, this idea of your personal identity coming through. So these are some circle back questions that I would like you wonderful students to think about throughout this presentation. We're going to revisit them at the end, but the main things I want you to think about while we get through this presentation is which of the 3 prompts are you going to create an outline for? What experiences from your own life align with your chosen prompt? And most importantly, how can an outline help you guide your thinking before actually writing your first draft? So don't worry, you don't need your answers yet. We're just putting those questions out into the world. We'll revisit them. So we're finally at it, the outline. What is the purpose of this outline, this word that I keep saying? The purpose of the outline is to provide you with some idea of where you are going with your essay. You can see my visual on this slide is a map. So some common analogies that I encourage students to consider when creating an outline include building a house, cooking a meal for friends, or painting a picture. You need a strong foundation, rooms, doors, and windows to have a house that you can live in, or an essay that's successful. Cooking a meal for friends, you need all your ingredients and the spices to make a chef's kiss. You need all that stuff. And finally, painting a picture, you need your supplies and your passion and your artistic prowess to create a painting that can go in the Museum of Modern Art. So as silly as it sounds, I think this is a really good visual analogy / metaphor for students to use when they're creating an essay outline. You need to have all of the different parts that you can, the information, whether it's growth or values, and the context of that information so that you can present a whole cohesive idea to the reader of your essay, the admissions coach who will eventually be reading your essays. Now, the goals of all of these analogies and the goal of an outline, remember that your essay, as I said, should be complete and cohesive. At no point should your reader look at the essay and think, why did they write that? There should be no looks of confusion on your reader's face while they're reading your essay. And finally, looking at this visual on the right side of the screen again, create a map of where you're going. So we want to get them to that red X, to that treasure, so to speak. How do we get our reader there? That's the point of the outline. So before we can even get to the end, to that buried treasure, then we need to have your main idea or your key theme. So we have to have a strong foundation, as I said, with a metaphor of the house. The starting point that you need, you are going to have to build your entire essay off of this. So it's important to make your main idea or key theme one that resonates with your readers and one that's exciting for you to write about. What are you trying to tell your reader? And more importantly, why is it important to your reader to know what you're trying to tell them? Having a clear and concise main idea or key theme can help you figure out both the what and the why of your essay. I'll explain more about what I mean by the what and the why as we go through this presentation. Now, the important thing that I think for students to recognize is when you're usually approaching a topic, there's a lot of thoughts flying through your brain. So try to maintain a single sentence for your key idea. Don't make it stretch longer and longer and longer because it will be really hard to focus in on the message that you want to share with your audience. So here's a few examples. Prompt 1 from this year's annual essay contest is, does an increasingly interconnected world help or hinder human thriving? Discuss your position. And after talking with student A, this is what they had to say. I want to write about how the internet is hindering human thriving because children are pressured to look and act a certain way. Social media and the internet are pressuring children to grow up too fast, and I feel this way in my own life because I am always comparing myself to others. I think we should encourage children to engage with one another directly instead of over the internet. This is because people can just be themselves instead of comparing themselves to others. So lots of great ideas in this blurb from student A, but we need to try and hone in and focus in on what the central message student A is trying to say. So if I think about this and think about what's the biggest idea or the most important part of this paragraph, my main idea for student A's outline or essay is, I believe that an increasingly interconnected world hinders human thriving because it pressures people into comparing themselves to others and feeling overwhelmed. Now, a good check or a good quality assurance for your main idea to see if it's a good main idea, go ahead and check if it answers your prompt above. So here we can see, does it answer the prompt? Absolutely. The student is discussing whether or not an interconnected world helps or hinders human thriving, and they give their position. They give reasons why it is, in this case, hinders human thriving. So another example with the same prompt. Student B thinks having an increasingly interconnected world has been great, especially during this ongoing pandemic. It has been really hard to be away from friends and to not be able to hang out and travel with them. I miss being at school, but I am really glad that we have computers and ways to still learn virtually. I use social media all the time because it makes me feel connected to my friends and family, even if I am physically isolated. Also, an interconnected world is what exposes me to new ways of thinking. It is one of the reasons I want to attend college in the United States. Again, lots of great ideas here. But one of the things that's important for us to recognize is what is the central theme or the most important message that student B is trying to send their readers. And that is, I believe that an increasingly interconnected world helps human beings thrive because it keeps us connected to each other and exposes us to new ideas. So let's again do our quality check. Does student B's main idea answer the prompt? Absolutely. He talks about how it helps human thriving, so answering the first part of the prompt, and he discusses his position by giving some reasons. So now that the student has their main idea, they can proceed with the outline. Finally, going to a different prompt, prompt 2 to remind you is tell us a story from history or from your own life about a time when a little thing made a big difference. What should we learn from this story? And here's student C's suggestion for what they should write about. My mother is a pharmacologist and works a lot. She is rarely home during the week, and I spent most of my childhood helping raise my younger brother while she was working to provide for us. There were many moments when I felt upset and angry because I did not want to play, take care of my baby brother. However, I always appreciated that my mother made the effort on weekends to take us to the local park. Even though she was tired from the work week, she made a commitment to take us there. I always admire that she stuck to this commitment, and it has helped me recognize how important it is to be dependable and to make time for the people you love, even if you are very busy. So this, you can see, this specific student is focusing more on the value side of this essay. They are talking about how they felt, their family, things that are important to them as a human being. So the main idea that I glean from this student's thoughts is when you live in a single parent household, there are many challenges, but you learn to make time for the people you love and to remain committed to your family. Let's see if this answers the prompt. Okay, so if we look at this, I will say for this main idea, it doesn't necessarily tell us the story from history or from the student's life about a time when a little thing made a big difference, but we can see that within this student's thoughts, they talk specifically about going to the park with their mother on weekends. That's something where, even though our main idea is focused on their values about being present in their family and making time for the people they love, even when they're very busy, we can build off of their ideas, the other ones that they generated, in the actual outline. So, thinking of students A, B, and C, we're going to jump into outline type 1, which is a concept map. This outline type focuses on descending thoughts, or the natural order of events. Think of it as going from point A to point B to point C, or, in other words, a beginning, a middle, and an end, just like a natural narrative goes. So once again, you're mapping out your thoughts so that you have a better idea of what your finished completed essay is going to look like. This sign is to give you an idea. We are setting up sort of fence posts or street signs that allow our reader to know where they are going. So here's a concept map example for student B. There's the prompt to remind you. But basically, I copied over student B's main idea that they and myself talked about. And then we're going to go through this and we're going to start taking some of the ideas they had and compartmentalizing them or ordering them in that descending train of thoughts, that natural path from beginning, middle, and end. So we start out with the beginning saying, an interconnected world helps human beings thrive. That's the simplest answer to the prompt above. Once we've got that, we need to start giving some reasoning, some evidence about why we have that position, why we want to discuss that position, the second part of the prompt. So in their previous ideas, they said it connects people through social media, video calls, emails, etc. Then they insert a little bit of their own story in regards to this essay prompt. They say, during the pandemic, I've struggled with personal isolation. I miss my friends and I miss being in school in person. Social media and the interconnected world it creates has allowed me to feel less lonely, stay connected to my friends and family. So they're giving these ideas and they're connecting them back to this bigger idea of connecting people through social media, video calls, and emails. Okay, so we've talked a little bit about that first part of their essay. Now we're moving on to one of their other reasons why an interconnected world helps human beings thrive. It exposes people to new ideas and ways of thinking. Great, that's another separate reason that they can discuss. Now let's give additional details. In our outline, if we did not have an increasingly interconnected world, then we would not be introduced to new ideas. And they wanted to put even more information regarding this specific bullet. They wanted to say, I want to study in the US because I want to learn more about our world in a different country. They also say things such as, we would not be able to readily share cultural exchanges and conversations. And here, which we'll talk a little bit more about, they say we would not be able to aid in global crises like the ongoing pandemic and the war between Ukraine and Russia. They are making this essay even more relevant for the reader by using contemporary issues and global crises in their essay. So here they are focusing on the big picture of our world at large and bringing it into their essay, which makes it even more legitimate. Finally, their next point is an interconnected world has helped many people find community and allows deep human connections. Because they've been thinking through this, this is another essay idea or another part of the essay that they want to speak about. And I gave a general example of I have found my own community of fill in the blank. Now, remember, in your personal essays, you're going to be specific, and we will talk about this, but being specific is your best friend. I don't want to know what your friend down the street's doing. I don't know what your teacher in another city's doing. I want to know what you are doing and what you've been up to, and I want to know about you in these essays. So they say, I found my own community of basket weavers, because that's what came to mind. I would not likely have found this community otherwise because I don't know of many places where there are basket weavers. So the student B is excited about this new community. And finally, for all these reasons, I believe that an increasingly interconnected world helps human thriving. So we've looked a little bit about on student B's concept map. Now I want you to notice something. In this concept map, you see there are a lot of these sentences that I have highlighted. And basically, based on the slide's title, I'm sure you can deduce the power of I. As I previously mentioned, these essays are focused on you. They are there to help you display the best parts of yourself on the essay. That's the goal of a college admissions essay and the essay prompts for this year's annual contest. So the power of I continued. As we talked about earlier, admissions officers want to know who you are. They want to see your growth, that upward trajectory, or learn about your values, your identity through your application essays. Do not be afraid to reflect and speak about yourself. That's the point of these essays. So let's look at his concept map one more time. Here we can see that the student has included in his outline or concept map statements such as, I have struggled with personal isolation. I miss my friends. I miss being in school in person. The interconnected world has allowed me to feel less lonely and to be connected to the people in my life, etc. So this basically shows you that the student is inserting themselves into this essay. Even though the prompt says, does an increasingly interconnected world help or hinder human thriving? Discuss your position. It doesn't openly ask the student to share how it's helped or hindered them, but it's implied. We want to hear not only how it's helped or hindered human thriving at large, but also the personal story of the student. That's why the power of I, of inserting yourself into these essays, is so important. Now, one thing that I discussed earlier was the idea of the what and the why in an essay. And one of the most universal truths about writing any kind of essay, or writing in general, is fundamentally about context, the information you present, and connection, how that information connects to your reader or your audience. A good outline gives us both. So in student B's outline or concept map, they provide us with the context, the what, or the information that we need to understand what they're saying, as well as the connection, the why it's important for us as a reader to read their essay and to absorb this information. So here's some more explanation. The what, or context, of student B's essay is discussing their position on whether or not an increasingly interconnected world helps or harms human beings. They're answering the prompt. They believe that an increasingly interconnected world helps human beings thrive. Again, they're answering the prompt. And then they give specific reasons as to why this is their position, such as the fact that people are able to find communities, basket weavers or otherwise, in an interconnected world. So again, they're answering the prompt. They're doing exactly what the prompt is asking them. Now, on top of that, another layer of their essay will be the why, or the connection of their essay. This is when the student discusses how this interconnected world helps them personally in finding a specific community, in overcoming loneliness during the ongoing pandemic, etc. Student B also explains why this topic is important for them to write about without openly saying, I think it is important. You want your words to do the talking, but you don't have to necessarily be so overt that you say, I think this is important because, or this is my why. You don't want to do that because that is way too underdeveloped in terms of your writing. That is something that will show the admissions officer you're doing this to check a box rather than frequently and actually genuinely engaging with the essay. I'll talk more about that later. So student B creates an empathetic connection with the reader by explaining their own struggles and connecting these struggles to the prompt. For instance, in this example, every single person, this pandemic has been such a difficult time, especially for young people, to navigate the world and to hang out with their friends and to learn and to be in a community get together. Every single person, no matter their age, has felt that at some time during this pandemic. And that's why this prompt this response to this prompt is effective, because it creates a connection between the reader and the writer that is solid, that is very, very much a shared experience, but still unique to the writer. So going back to student B's concept map, here you can see the color coding that matches context and connection. The orange represents the what, and the blue represents the why. And you can see that it's no coincidence that when I had the slide on the power of I, that was also in blue, because most likely anything that has to do with I statements or has to do with personal stories or feelings, values, growth of the student, of the writer, usually is the why. You're raising the stakes, so to speak. You're making it important and you're investing energy into the writing so that your reader reads it and recognizes, oh, this is the reason why the student is writing this essay, okay? So that may seem a little daunting of a task outline type 1 concept maps if you've never done it before. So outline type 2 is called a thinking map. And you can see an example on the right side of the screen. Basically, what this is this focuses on a stream of consciousness, or the sometimes non-linear path you take to get to your main idea. For me, sometimes when I'm approaching an essay with a student, they have so many ideas that they are sharing so wonderfully and passionately that we are trying to figure out and focus in on that central idea, that one sentence that will tie their entire essay together. So a thinking map works really well in that situation because it's similar to a concept map, but it's even simpler to set up. Again, you are mapping out your thoughts. It's no coincidence that I'm referring to these as concept maps, thinking maps, etc. The word map is there purposefully. So here's an example using Student C's essay. Student C had a lot of really, really great information and a lot of reflection that they were doing regarding their family situation. So the prompt here is to remind you that the main idea that the student came up with was it is important to make time for your loved ones and to remain committed to them. That's the message that they've decided they want to share with the admissions officer. So here now they're using the bubbles outside of the central bubble, the ones connected through a little bit of a black line. They're using them to see whether or not their ideas connect back to this main idea. And it's as simple as saying, okay, helping raise my baby brother. Does that connect to the idea it is important to make time for your loved ones and to remain committed to them? Yeah, she's making time to raise her baby brother, to help raise her baby brother. Trips to the parks on the weekends. Does it connect? Absolutely. It's important to make time for your loved ones, and their mother is making time for their little brother and them as they every weekend, even though their mother is very busy, etc. And one thing here that might be good is to recognize the difference between your context or the information that provides a bigger picture of the essay and then your connection, basically how it has affected you as a writer, the emotional elements of your essay. So here you can see some of this information, such as saying frustrated that their mom was always busy or helping raise their baby brother. That doesn't tell me as a reader why they're writing this essay yet, but it does explain to me some of the context or some of the information that I need to understand why it's important. And then going off of that, you can see these blue bubbles at the bottom, or the blue text shows you how it has affected the student and how important it is for the student to share this story in their life when answering this prompt. So that's the point of this kind of map, is if you have an idea and it does not connect back to the main idea, the thought in the central circle of this thinking map, then we have to revisit. We have to do that third R, revisit that idea and see if there's a better way for us to integrate it into our essay. So now you saw that thinking map was very bare bones. There wasn't a lot to it, and it definitely wasn't enough to create a full essay outline. Now that student C has written down their base thoughts, they can develop those ideas similarly to student B's ideas on a concept map. Basically, taking that fundamental step to find the foundation of that house, and then they can start giving it walls, doors, windows, if you'll be so kind as to humor my metaphor. So with that being said, we can see that on student C's outline, it connected directly back to their main idea, or the center circle, all of the details connected back. Visually, this is a really good way to decide what information is necessary for your application. If one of the outline circles, as I mentioned, does not connect back to your main idea, then you should revisit or reflect on it and find different information that would be more effective. Remember, you need both the context, the what, or in this case, the orange text, and the connection, the why, the blue text, in order to have a thorough outline and eventually a successful essay. So, outline type 3, the reverse outcomes map. This outline type focuses on beginning at the end. Yes, you heard me correctly. This might sound a touch confusing, but for many students, one of the things that I've seen as a university admissions coach is that students struggle so much to come to an ending that they actually like, and to find an ending that hits home and has a powerful message. So it can be really difficult to create that ending. With this visual, very frequently students can see the ending, but they're trying to figure out how to get there. So with a reverse outcomes map, you're starting at the end and working your way backwards. This is a great way to tailor your main idea so that it perfectly displays your growth or values. So here's an example. Now, to be quite transparent with you all, this is one of the most difficult forms of outlines to do because many of you have not had the adequate practice in school to start at the end and think back to the beginning. It's not something that we're taught very frequently in high school. It's taught more heavily in college, this idea of working backwards. But maybe you can think about it for other subjects in school, such as math. I know very frequently, if you know the solution, you usually can get back to the beginning of the problem. That's a good analogy to think about with a reverse outcomes map. So here for student A, again, the prompt is there to remind you, and they have decided that the most important thing that they want to say at the ending of their essay is, living in an increasingly interconnected world hinders human development by limiting individuality and disregarding people's mental health. That's important for them to convey on their essay. Now that they have that information, it's natural to think about, okay, so I know that's what I want to end my essay with. How am I going to get there? Again, working backwards. So they thought about it and they realized, oh, okay, so I have said in my ending that individuality is limited and people's mental health is being disregarded. So because of that, we can move to the next thought that might lead up to that and say, it is important to follow your own path in life and to not be bogged down by comparing yourself to others. Taking care of yourself and focusing on your mental health is more important than comparing yourself to online influencers and unrealistic social media trends. Now you'll notice the ending gave me the what, that orange text, and now we're including some of this student's why, the connection to the reader or to their own life. They're discussing their own values or thoughts about this topic. Then we follow the next arrow, back to a little bit more of the what, more context. The BMC Health Journal reported that nearly 1/3 of students in Vietnam felt overwhelmed to be perfect by social media pressure in 2013, and this concern has only grown. That's providing more information that answers the prompt. Does an increasingly interconnected world help or hinder human thriving? For this student, it hinders human thriving. Going back from there, okay, so I've talked a little bit about how students need to feel perfect. Now I'm going to talk about my own life. I have felt limited in my own self-expression because I'm constantly exposed to social media that tells me I am not good enough. Okay, so again, they've given us more of a why, and that's something that I think creates an empathetic connection. Every person at one time or another has gotten on Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, Facebook, whatever platform you want to use, and thought, oh man, they're doing something really cool. Why am I not doing that? There's this sense of comparing that the student feels is important to point out. And finally, that brings us back to our beginning. Living in an increasingly interconnected world pressures people into looking and acting a certain way. This is limiting to their own identities and creates unnecessary stress, declines, and mental well-being. And for many of you out there, you might realize the ending and the beginning look pretty similar. There's a reason for that. You are trying to drive your message home throughout your entire essay. You are trying to make sure your reader is cognizant of your main idea, your central idea or key theme, the entire essay. So the point of this is, again, trying to figure out which steps or which pieces of information are relevant to giving us both the what, the context, and the why, the connection. So similarly to how we expanded on the concept map and the thinking map, when you're trying to expand on your reverse outcomes map in an outline form, again, remember that the reverse outcomes map is the reverse version of your original concept map or outline type 1. Basically, that descending order. Instead, with a reverse outcomes map, we are going in an ascending order. We're going from the end back up to the beginning, okay? The major strength of this outline type is allowing students the opportunity to refine or focus in their thoughts and recognize precisely that the final destination or endpoint, that red X, the buried treasure, so to speak, is where they want their readers to go. okay? So in student A's example, the most important message that they want to convey is that they believe living in an increasingly interconnected world hinders human development by limiting individuality and disregarding people's mental health. Now that they understand that this is the main idea or key theme that they're going for, and they want to share this with their audience, they can they can begin outlining the key information that they need to make this a successful, complete essay. Okay, so a lot of information. I have seen people have been raising their hands and I've been so polite. Thank you so much for waiting till the end for the Q&A session. Here are some additional tips for creating a strong outline. Firstly, take your time. Do not rush the 3 hours especially. Read, reflect, and revisit. Really, really think about the topics or the prompts that best align with your situation and your personal experiences. I will guarantee you that taking time on creating your outline will save you time when you actually start writing your essay, because you will have a map to follow. You'll have a general idea of where you are going, and more importantly, where you are taking your reader. Do not be afraid to experiment. As someone who has worked in the Harvard's admissions office and who has read multiple essays from many, many students, twists and surprises always end up being in the essays that resonate with me the most or that I feel stand out the most. So don't be afraid. An outline is there for you to plan things out. It's not your final essay. Try different things and see if there's unique ways that you can connect different topics together within your essay. Create an empathetic connection with your reader. I talked about this. So a prime example is with student B. They discussed how lonely they felt in isolation during the ongoing pandemic. And many individuals feel this way and will connect to student B on a deeper level after recognizing this shared experience. Going off of that, student B also mentioned how an interconnected world allows us to help in global crises, such as with the war with Ukraine and Russia. As I said, pulling in relevant stories and crises from the world, the present day world, that can be an effective way to connect to your reader, because everyone knows that that is a tragedy that is happening. So just different things that you can do there. But remember, these essays, unlike the rest of your college application, allow you an opportunity to show who you are as a human being on a deeper level, how you feel about something, what you think about something, your best attributes or characteristics or traits, whatever you want to say. So create that connection and try to share a piece of yourself with the reader. Finally, I mentioned this before, avoid generalizations and cliches. Be hyper-specific about your personal experiences. This is what will allow your essay to stand out within the contest and on your future college applications. Your outline should reflect this unique experience that is completely your own. Remember, you as a student are irreplaceable. No one else has lived your life, only you. So it's important to try and showcase something that is your own experience. So coming back to our circle back questions. Again, I hope after going through these outlines a little bit and discussing more about the purpose of outlines and the purpose of creating a successful application essay, you have a better understanding of which of the 3 prompts for this year's essay contest from Spark Prep and Bloom Global Education that you're going to create an outline for, perhaps what experiences from your own life align with your chosen prompt, and how can an outline help you guide your thinking before actually writing your first draft? So really, really consider those questions as you approach the outline, hopefully this week. Now, aside from outlines, one thing that I think is important is when I do presentations like this, frequently students are like, well, why do you have the ability to tell us what to write on an essay or how to do an outline? And I feel very privileged to be a part of the Spark Prep team or in proxy, the Bloom Global Education team. So the co-founders of our organization graduated from Stanford University with honors. Collectively, all of our coaches have over 3 decades or 30 plus years of admissions work. We have clients throughout Southeast Asia, in Vietnam, Singapore, Hong Kong, in India, China, and across the United States. And we have nearly a dozen specialists, including graduates from Yale, Harvard, like myself, Stanford, and Columbia. We've worked with hundreds of students, And many of our students attend the most reputable American universities, including Stanford, every Ivy League, and most public Ivies like the University of Michigan in both graduate and undergraduate admissions. So I'm going to brag and say we know our stuff. So we're very, very excited for the possibility of working with you in the future if you feel you need additional resources when approaching your college essays. And one of the reasons that I think our team is so successful is because we ask ourselves these questions and also ask them of each of our students. We want to know, what is the social value of education? How does higher education serve to develop the individual? How can we derive value from approaching the admissions process with a right frame of mind and a good attitude and lots of hard work? And most importantly, how do we assess fit in a world focused primarily on prestige? Our goal at the end of the day is to match our students to schools that they feel comfortable devoting 4 or more years of their life to. We want you to succeed not only academically, but emotionally and develop as a full human being and as a leader so that you can continue helping to better humanity. So with that little bit aside about the organization that I feel so blessed to be a part of, I want to make sure that I'm clear about the next steps for the writing contest that is being hosted by Spark Prep and Bloom Global Education. After attending this workshop, you will have the opportunity to continue participating in our annual writing contest, and I hope you will. Some key deadlines and expectations to keep in mind, though, are all outlines must be submitted online by 11:59 p.m. on Friday, April 8th, 2022, a week from today. Students who successfully submit their essay outlines are invited to our second workshop titled Application Essay Editing and Content Development Principles on Friday, April 15th, 2022. I feel very blessed to be asked to come back and to hopefully give a little bit more helpful information. It's going to be a great workshop, so I hope you'll join us. And then finally, essay entries and final drafts must be submitted online by midnight roughly on Friday, April 29th. So you have a little less than a month to get going and to write the next great essay. Please make sure to follow us on social media so that you can stay informed regarding deadlines and our contest in general. With that in mind, here's some social media and contact information for Spark Prep. And this presentation, if you would like it at the end of this session, we will be sending it out and disseminating it. So if you need it, you can always return to this information there. We hope to assist you in the future. And with that, thank you so much for your attention. I am happy to take any questions, as well as my colleagues who are here with me, like Hien. We are here to answer any questions about the contest, about essay outlines, etc. And it's been an absolute pleasure presenting.
Yeah, so thank you, Jaros,
Thank
for
you.
your
And I'm going to
great
stop sharing my
presentation.
screen. Thank you, Hien. Should I stop sharing my screen?
You can just leave with that because we will
Okay,
be moving
perfect.
into the Q&A sections now. So everyone, we already got some questions from students who already registered for the webinar today, and we will work on that first. But during the event, if you have any questions for our coach, please just simply put the questions in the box chat or raise your hand to let us know you want to add something, so we can invite you to turn on your micro and interact directly with our coach. Okay, so Jarod, are you ready to work on some questions?
Lay it on me, I'm excited.
Okay, so the very first one for you. Can you recommend some materials and techniques for grade 10 students to practice essay writing?
Absolutely. So that's a great question. So when you're in grade 10, you still have a little time before usually you apply to American schools, which is usually done during your junior leading into your senior year, your 11th to 12th year. I encourage students to use the Common Application is a platform that you will become very familiar with if you plan to apply to American schools, and they present their prompts publicly for their applications every year. I encourage you to practice your essays using their prompts, and that's something where that would be a great time for you to reach out to friends, family members, or if you're curious, you can even reach out to tutors and coaches at Spark Prep or Bloom Global Education to get additional help practicing. there are plenty of resources out there. Another resource that you might consider is many schools in the US have unique essay prompts, such as those akin to what is your favorite word, real or imagined, or real or fabricated, and why do you like it so much? These questions that are a little bit more left field or creative, that is a way that I encourage students to challenge themselves. Don't always answer these questions that are just like, tell us more about you. Answer questions that will allow you to give more unique information about yourself in a way that's unconventional.
Thank you.
Of course.
Yeah, and we have the next one. What are the most important factors of an effective or impressive essays?
That's a great question. So yes, the criteria for an impressive essay, there are a few things that students should remember. Firstly, surprises and twists are valuable, and making sure that your essay stands out with a surprise or a twist is something that will help it resonate and stand out from the pack, so to speak, or stand out from the crowd of essays. So that's something. Some other important criteria: make sure that your essay is cohesive, that it has a beginning, a middle, and end, and they all connect to one another. One of the analogies that I use very frequently with students is this idea of a red thread that you can sew through your essay. If you can connect every single sentence together in some way, then you're on the right track. If you can't, we need to revisit that third R. And the last thing I would say about an impressive essay, one of the criteria for it, is remembering to talk about yourself, the power of I, and making sure that your experience is unique. Again, saying something along the lines of, I want to do better in school. That is not specific enough. That is not enough of you. Every single student at some time in their life has said, I want to be better in school. I want to achieve at a higher level. So I want you to make something that's hyper specific to yourself. For example, I have a student who happens to be dyslexic, and the student really set a goal for herself to increase her reading scores because she was really struggling with her reading. So she discusses how she reached out for a coach to help with reading. She discusses how she did independent practice. She discusses how she overcame her struggles and she had that growth, that upward trajectory. That's specific, that's engaging, and that's interesting for me as a reader because it's not the same. It's a shared experience, but it's not the same experience that everyone else has in school. So I think that would be my answer.
Thanks for the brilliant insights.
Thank you.
Yeah, I hope that helps for the students. And next we have another questions, and I think we have so many students who really cared about this one.
Okay.
So can you share about essential criteria in college admissions essay? And
Absolutely.
will the criteria vary in different countries? For example, in the US, in Europe, in Australia?
Yeah, that's a great question. Thank you. So yes, that's a super great question. Fascinating. So to be completely honest, in different countries like Europe, the European Union, in Australia, in Canada, in the UK specifically, that's a very common place for students to want to study, and the US, there are slightly different criteria, but the main goals of an essay are you're talking about yourself, you're being hyper specific, you are making sure that it is a unique experience to your own life, and most importantly, one of the universal criterias, and I think there's another Q&A question about this that I saw pop up, is making sure that your essay is refined, polished, and that it does not have any mistakes. I will tell you right now, you could have the best essay in the world. If there are grammatical errors or punctuation errors, it is going to really take away from it. So those are the main three things, though, is be hyper-specific, talk about yourself, and make sure that you are sharing a story that is unique to your life. Those are the main criteria that across the different nations, across the different universities, they are all looking for.
Great. So another one for you. What are the most common admissions essay mistakes?
Oh, I'm sorry. Could you say that one more time, Yan?
Yeah, sure. what are the most common admission essay mistakes?
Oh, mistakes. Okay,
Yeah.
perfect. So yeah, so that actually leads in perfectly. So that's the same thing. Thank you so much for repeating that. The most common mistakes, as I just alluded to previously, are spelling errors, grammatical errors, and also punctuation errors. Again, if your essay is this stellar, amazing masterpiece, and admissions officer catches that you're missing capitalization at the beginning of the sentence, or you have an extra period, or you're missing a comma, or you wrote a word that perhaps is misspelled, that is going to take a lot away from your essay. That is going to take a lot. And I want to really emphasize that. When I talked about the first R, reread or read the essay, do that for your essay too, or the prompt, do that for your essay as well. Reread, proofread over and over. And when you think that you've proofread it enough and everything is perfect, have someone else proofread it if you feel comfortable doing that, because that is the thing that as an admissions officer, I think really, really colors our perception of an applicant, is seeing a student who hasn't taken the time to have an essay that doesn't have those errors. So that's something that's really important. Also, the other thing that I see with a lot of students as I've worked with them as a university admissions coach is having essays that are not complete, are not cohesive. So if you have an essay where you start discussing how your favorite word is friend, and that's because you have deep connections with your friends and they support you in what you do, but then halfway through the essay, you start talking about how you've joined a community of basket weavers. I don't know, I'm so stuck on that, but you've joined a community of basket weavers. That does not connect, that is not cohesive, that is not complete. Unless you're discussing how your friends are in that community and how that connects back to your favorite word, make sure that you're answering the prompt completely and that your entire essay is connected back to it. If you have any unnecessary details, we call it filler information or information that's not needed for the reader, that can really draw away from it as well. And most importantly, many of these academic essays for applications have word limits. So roughly for instance, on the Common App, there's a word limit on the person statement of 650 words. Because you only have about a page and a half to write a really, really high level question, in most cases, you want to make sure that every word counts. So unnecessary details are also one of the most common mistakes that I see for students who are trying to write these kinds of essays.
Thank you.
Of course.
Yeah, besides mistakes, maybe many students also worry about translating the ideas from Vietnamese to English, because we are not native speakers. We perhaps many difficulty in doing so. So you have any tips for expressing ideas in English clearly and smoothly?
Absolutely. And thank you for the thoughtful question. Well, I'm going to say firstly, one thing that I tell all of my students, and I think is so important, is recognize the tremendous talent that you have in speaking multiple languages. I wish I could say the same for myself, but I myself am still learning English from day to day. So the fact that you are able to speak English as well as Vietnamese and maybe some other languages, those are such huge talents, and you should be extremely proud of the efforts you've put towards learning multiple languages. That being said, I think it's really, really important if you are having trouble struggling to communicate your ideas smoothly or fluidly in English, I have two tips. The first one is it never hurts to write your outline or your rough draft in Vietnamese or whatever language you're most comfortable with, and then put it through a Google Translator or another translating app of some sort. And usually it'll give you a rough idea of what your thoughts are going to be in English. That I have found is quite helpful for some of my students who have a little less practice with English, to first think about it in the language that you're most familiar with, and then using that to sort of build your ideas slowly. Also, going off of that first tip, a thesaurus or a book that gives you synonyms or words that match each other, as well as a dictionary, those are going to be your best friends. An English dictionary and an English thesaurus, or maybe an English to Vietnamese dictionary, will be your best friends, because they will allow you to search for those words that you can feel are on the tip of your tongue, but you can't quite recall. that is something that I definitely encourage students to use. Most Word writing documents, such as Microsoft Word or Google Docs, have a dictionary or a thesaurus built right into them. So you can use it right there while you're writing. Oh, what am I trying to think of? Type in some other words that might work and see what pops up. Going off of that, if you feel you still need additional help, then I'm going to say, I definitely encourage you to look for a coach, a writing coach, an admissions application coach. I know we at Spark Prep would be thrilled to have you. And our job is to help you make those thoughts conducive to the success of your essay. Our job is to make sure that we can help you navigate your thoughts in a way that not only retains your voice and your natural style, but showcases the best parts of who you are as an applicant. So those would probably be my pro tips: is try to ask for help, whether it's from a family member, a friend who maybe has a better idea of English, etc., a teacher, if you want to approach them and feel comfortable doing so, or to hire a coach, get someone who can help you with composing your ideas in a succinct way, because we're learning every day. And don't beat yourself up if you're struggling at first, but definitely give yourself the resources that you need to be successful.
Thank you. That would be great for us to practice writing in English. And we have the last questions for you before we move into the live Q&A sections today. So the question is, how can I make the most of my personal experiences in the application essays? And how do I dig deeper into that, but not just listing what I have done?
That's a great question. So thank you. Yes. And I understand that is something that I want to make very clear. A lot of students struggle when they are reflecting, the second R, when they're reflecting on their personal experiences. It's very easy to just list out, this happened to me, this is when it happened, this is where it happened, this is why it happened. And it can become very, very boring. And one quick pro tip: when you are writing an essay, you should be excited about it, because if you're not, and it seems boring for you to write about, I guarantee you it will be boring for the reader to read. So make sure that you're writing about something that is relevant to you and you feel it's important to share with the world. Now, with that in mind, I think it's important to share, when you're thinking about your personal experiences, really take that time, like I said, either in the outline or in your stage of reflecting, the second R. Make sure that you are taking the time to think through, is this experience unique to me? And I'm not asking you, I want to make this very clear, I'm not asking you to be an award-winning author, a television star, and an idol at the same time at 16 or 17 years old, or even younger or older. I'm not asking you to do these tremendous things that are so specific to you. We have many shared experiences as human beings, but the way that we interact and navigate shared experiences, such as the loss of a loved one, changing schools, getting a job, struggling in school, etc., there are unique ways that each of us navigate those situations. So when you're thinking about personal experiences, think about a situation that either deeply affected you, either positively or negatively, and think about, more importantly, why you feel it's important to share it with your reader. One of the things that's going to be valuable for you when listening your personal experiences and really trying to think about which personal experiences are meaningful or important to write about is, again, that empathetic connection. If you want to write about your passion for soccer, for playing soccer or football, then think about, is that an experience that someone else may also have, a passion that someone else may also have? If they do, great. But how is your passion different from that other person's? I want you to really think about being hyper specific to your own situation and to the feelings that you've had. The other thing that I think is the easiest thing to do to prevent this sort of just listing your personal experiences or different details of those personal experiences is, remember that second part of what is fundamental to writing: connecting your context to your connection, the what to the why. Make sure when you're sharing your why, you are really, really emphasizing to the reader, why is it important for me to tell you that I have a passion for soccer? Oh, maybe it's because In soccer, I became team captain and I learned leadership skills that I will use with me in college. Or why is it important that you're telling us that your mother works all the time and that you're a little frustrated about her not being home all the time? Because you've learned from her the importance of being committed to your family, even when very busy, etc. Giving us that why will make the what a lot more meaningful, even if you feel that it's your personal experience and maybe it's not the most unique experience. Giving us that why will make that experience unique.
Yeah, great. So now, students, it's time for you to interact and with our coach and ask him some questions if you want to. So I already got some questions from our audience today, and can help pass along to you, our coach, Gerald. But just in case you want to interact directly with our coach, please just raise your hand and we can invite you to turn on your microphone and talk with him directly. Okay, so the very first one is being a pacifist and environmentalist counts as a value.
Oh, that's an interesting one. Yes, so being a pacifist or an environmentalist, that's a great question. Yes, I appreciate that. Thank you. That is a great question. I think that those are both great. I think those are both great parts of your identity that align sort of with that values aspect we were talking about. Those would be great things to share on your academic essays or your application essays. One of the things that I would encourage you again to do, if those are parts of your identity that you want to share, make sure that they're specific to you. So if you feel that you are an environmentalist and it's really important to you, share in the essay, depending on what the prompt is, share why it's important to you. Say, so for instance, maybe you work at a food co-op and you help bring sustainable food to your community. Maybe you help plant trees or pick up trash on the side of the road. One thing that both of those, being a pacifist and also being environmentalist, those will really, really lend themselves to powerful essays about philanthropy, helping people, making sure that you are assisting people and showing that you care deeply about the world around us and the people in it. So, like I said, when you label yourself with those kinds of identities, that's fabulous. But make sure that you are specific about why those identities are important to you as a human being. I hope that answers your question. But yes, those are two great topics that you can definitely bring up in certain application essays.
Okay, I think we got these questions from a student named Duy Hưng. So, Hưng, if you still have any further concerns, you can just let us know. We can work more on that. Okay, so the next question is for you. Is there any essay that given the vibe of both value and growth?
Oh, that's a great question. So yes, so there are essays that have both values and growth as their central themes. Usually though, when you are approaching an essay that can go either way, try to choose one to focus on. So for instance, I totally understand what you're trying to say. You could have an essay that you're discussing your growth, and in some ways, with displaying that upward trajectory, it shows your values of like hard work, being persistent, being resilient, etc. That's great. But one thing that you should consider is usually to start out with at least an outline, choose one or the other, just because you can always build in more information later. But it's very difficult if you have too much information starting out in the essay to condense it. It can be much harder than adding more information later. So I think if you have a given essay that says, for instance, an example of one of the Common App essays this year is, think about a time when you challenged a belief or idea and what prompted your thinking and what was the outcome. That's one that you could definitely discuss this idea of growth and of values based on where you go with it. but I encourage you to start out with choosing one or the other, or thinking about the personal experience you want to relate to that prompt. Which of those two categories aligns with it the most? So if you're going to talk about succeeding in a challenge in your life, that probably will be most closely aligned with growth. And that will also be most closely aligned with an essay that asks you about challenges. Whereas if you discuss something about your identity, or a time that you explored a facet of your personal identity, that's more related to your values. So really, one of the best things you can do is, when you are writing an outline for the essay, if you're not really sure if you're going to stick with growth or value, or try to blend both together, then I would encourage you to try and make a thinking map, one of those very, very quick to set up outline types, outline type 2. Try to set it up for both growth and value, and see which one you find to be more compelling or more interesting to write about. That would be my tip, is try to focus on one of those two categories first. And then once you feel comfortable with your outline, maybe you can try to integrate some of the other category in. I hope that helps.
That's a great answer for the questions.
Thank you. You're too kind, Tia.
Yeah. And we have the next one from a student who want to ask.
Okay.
Is this essay similar to the IELTS writing, but more personal?
That's a great question. That's a really good question. I would say yes. I think for the purposes of this essay contest through Spark Prep and Bloom Global Education, these essays are meant to help you think and to start developing this idea of what is personal to you. The goal of these essays is to give you sort of a taste of what college application essays are going to look like and going to be for you. But yes, I do agree with you. I think there are some similarities. The main thing, though, is that, again, you are making this about you. We're talking about you. So even if the essay doesn't directly tell you, talk about yourself. The goal of these types of essays is to share your story with the reader, because, again, you're trying to present the best picture of yourself here, and one that is separate from your GPA, your SAT scores, your extracurriculars. Those tell admissions officers, and in this case, the panel of judges for this essay contest, more about you and who you are in a professional sense. But for any essay that you're writing in this context of this contest, or an application in the future, is focused on sharing more about who you are at your core. So yes, I would say there are some similarities, but yes, these essays are definitely more personal.
Cool. And the next one, somebody want to ask, how can I find an interesting story to write about?
That's a great question. So the thing that and I've already touched on this a few times, but the thing that I would definitely encourage you, if you're struggling to find a quote unquote interesting story to write about, I would encourage you to, again, consider if there are any specific experiences in your life that you continue to reflect on just in your daily life. So, for example, I'll give a quick personal example. I am a twin. My twin brother is my best friend. We're very, very close. And one of the things that has resonated with me is when I decided to attend Harvard College, I'll never forget that my brother presented me with a long letter, basically wishing me luck and wishing me success. And it was the first time that I was moving away from home, moving away from my family. And it was a time of great change in my life. And that is something that I continue to reflect on and I have gratitude for even years later. And so that's a very small thing. And I am not the first person to receive a letter of good luck from their family member. But I find that that's a story that I could use if I was going to write an essay about college or about leaving home. That's something that I could use, even though it might not be super interesting to everyone. I feel very confident in being able to relay the information and how it made me felt that the innate value of it, and also the why, the connection with another reader about loving my family, loving my brother, etc. That to me is something that I feel confident writing an interesting essay about. So I encourage you all, if you're struggling with an interesting story, or you feel that your story is not quote unquote interesting enough, it's not as outlandish, it's not as over the top, think about those moments that are maybe a little bit regular day to day, and think about how, even if they might seem regular or normal, there are moments that are exceptional to them. So think about conversations with friends or family members that have taught you lessons that have stuck with you all these years. Or think about small acts of kindness with either a teacher or a teammate or a coach that you continue to draw from as you interact with the world. Small interactions can really make a big difference, like one of our prompts also illustrates. That's a good way to think of interesting stories. Also, the last thing that I will say is be hyper specific. So I've said this so many times, I sound like a broken record, but hopefully you enjoy the song. I want to make this super clear. If you're hyper specific with what you're writing, no matter what you write, it is going to be substantially better if it's specific to you. So even if you think you're writing about the topic that everyone has shared, like school, okay, that's a super common topic and a lot of students write about that. So there's a little bit of a concern there. But if you write about specifically your experiences and make it super, super clear to us that my experience is different than any of my peers, that will make your essay that much stronger. So remember, these interesting stories do not have to be outlandish ones or ones that are completely different from anything you've ever written, but they do have to be completely different from the person sitting next to you in the classroom or the person sitting behind you. We want to hear your story. So really try to focus in on those moments in your life that you found interesting personally, or that you found were meaningful. I hope that helps.
Thank you.
Of course.
We still have a question from Huy Quang. Huy Quang, do you want to turn on your microphones and read your questions?
Hi.
Hi, Huy Quang, how are you?
I'm a bit nervous asking this question for everyone to know, but one of my personal experience that I want to bring into my essay involved physical and mental abuse from one of my close ones, like my relatives.
Mm-hmm.
And when I decided that I would want to bring this personal experience into my essay, I wanted to ask that, should I lighten the details of my experience, or should I just be as real as possible? Thank you.
Yeah, of course. No, thank you so much for sharing. And I hope that you have the resources that you need to continue healing from this. So thank you for sharing. Regarding your essay and bringing this experience in, that's a very, very powerful experience. And I know that that can come from a very painful place. So a few tips that I have for you are to make sure when you're writing, remember that the details that you share should be ones that add to your narrative or the main idea, the central theme that you're sharing in your essay. So if there is a detail that is particularly sensitive for you that you don't feel quite comfortable sharing with the world on the platform in this kind of essay, that's completely up to you. And we don't want to coax any negative feelings out of you while you're writing this essay. And your vulnerability is something that we are very cognizant of. Like at the end of the day, your mental health is super important to not only you, but to us as readers of these future essays. So I'm going to encourage you, really think about if you have details that are sensitive that you feel you need to share, really think about why you're sharing them. Are you sharing them simply because they're necessary context, they're necessary information that we need to know to understand the situation with this person who is a relative of yours? Or are they there simply as filler information? And I don't mean that to sound dismissive, but we want to make sure that if you're breaching such a sensitive topic, make sure that you are really considering the why or the reasons behind writing about this topic. So if it's something that you feel has helped you in either gaining some sense of growth or recognizing your own values as a human being and how you interact with the world presently, that might be something that could be really, really powerful. And I do encourage you to pursue it if you feel confident in it. But again, it's okay to be choosy. It's okay to be particular with which details you share, and make sure that the details you do share drive your story or your main idea forward for the reader. I hope that helps.
No, it does. Thank you so much.
No, thank you, and good luck.
Thank you all. And that may be the very last question we got from the students today. So everyone, maybe we will be staying here for a few more minutes. So if you want to ask something, so you want to, yeah, you need help from us for anything, let's just let us know by writing in the box chat, or you can raise your hand to let us know that you have something to tell us. Yeah, and I think we have been working on some very great questions, and I really hope that the answers from our coach will help you. But we got one more new.
Perfect. And quick thing before we get to that, Hien, I think it's important for us to recognize, so will this presentation, this recording be available for students to watch after the fact, or will they be able to access this presentation if they want to look back at the information? That might be good information to share with them.
Yeah, so after the workshop, we will share the materials, the presentation, and also the record about the workshop today to the students, and every student, every questions that we already got, but we haven't had enough time to answer them here. We will definitely work on it carefully, and we'll send to you, the students, the answer from our coach later. So yeah, stay tuned with us on social media. Yeah, to watch again the record of the meeting today. If you're gonna miss it, or you want to maybe watch the webinar again, yeah, and find something interesting to work on your own essays later on, or your own writing projects, something like that. And don't forget to join us in our essay writing this year, essay writing contest this year, because you can earn lots of valuable prize, and you can have opportunity to improve your writing skills and to connect with our experts. That would be a great chance, I think. Okay, so, and we got a cute message from the students.
Okay.
She said that I do want to thank Jaros for this amazing sessions. It has been so much more enjoyable than I expected.
Well, I'm so glad, and thank you for the kind words. It has been my pleasure. You have all had such great questions, and I am so grateful to be here. I hope to see many of you at the second workshop about 2 weeks from now.
Yeah, we actually got the message from Trúc Phương. So Phương, you want to turn on your microphone and tell us something more if you still want to talk to us? Are you still there, Trúc Phương? Okay, maybe she just will leave the message here. Or you can't turn on your microphone. Oh, let me check again. Just a moment, please.
Of course, thank you so much, Hien, for handling the logistics. I appreciate it.
Yeah, and everyone, don't forget to participate in our contest and submit your very first entry for the first round. So you will have a chance to see Jarrod in the next workshop, which will feature application essays editing and content development principles. Will be another interesting one. I can't really find from here. Oh, there we go. Okay, so now you can speak. Trúc Phương.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Thank you.
Well, yeah, if anything, I just really want to say thank you because, well, I was here. I didn't really expect much, but it was a really great session. And I learned a lot more about essays here than ever before because my experience with writing essays in Vietnam is like very academic. I'm not allowed to mention personal experience and such, so this has been really eye-opening, I must say.
Well, I so appreciate that. And thank you so much for attending. And the one thing that I would encourage you as you continue learning about essays and learning more about yourself is I know that there's a heavy focus in Vietnam to write about other subjects that do not include oneself. This is an opportunity for you to brag about yourself, talk about yourself, and share the best parts of yourself. So I'm super grateful that this was helpful. And thank you so much for the kind words. Truly, I appreciate them.
Yes, thanks, Trúc Phương. And we will be so glad to see you and have you join us at our essay writing contest this year. Yeah, so, and then after submitting your essay, just the outline for your essay for the very first round of the contest, you definitely will see Jarrod again in the next webinar, the next workshop. Okay, so thanks everyone. If you still have any questions, you can just contact us via our social media, or you can write emails, send it to me so I can write to our coach and help you get everything clearly. Hopefully, yeah.
Yeah, and
Okay.
a huge thank you again to everyone who attended. Thank you to Spark Prep and Bloom Global Education for hosting this contest. And make sure you get those outlines in, please. They are due next week. So get those in so that I have the pleasure of working with you again at our next workshop. But thank you all for your time. I know you've had a long day, and I hope that I've brightened it a little bit. You definitely have made my day brighter. So thank you.
So thanks, Jarrod, again for joining us today. And we can't wait to see you in the next webinar. Yes.
Wonderful, me too. The feeling is mutual. And I hope everyone has a great night. Keep up on our social media, and we look forward to seeing you soon.
Yeah. So happy to see you today. Vậy chắc là buổi workshop hôm nay đã kết thúc và xin cảm ơn các bạn đã tham gia, dành thời gian tham gia cùng Spark Web và Bloom Global Education. Mọi thông tin về cuộc thi thì chị đã gửi đường link ở đây, thì các bạn có thể tham khảo thêm và tham gia cuộc thi. Và cũng như chị và thầy cũng đã nói rồi là sau workshop này thì sẽ tới lịch các bạn nộp bản outline của bài thi viết luận của năm nay, và sau đó thì các bạn sẽ có cơ hội tham gia vào workshop thứ hai của thầy Jarrod. Và workshop thứ hai thì sẽ tập trung vào hướng dẫn các bạn cách hoàn chỉnh một bài luận ấn tượng, cũng như là một vài nguyên tắc khi mà mình triển khai nội dung trong bài. Thì tức là nó sẽ là một cái phần nâng cao hơn một chút so với cả workshop ngày hôm nay. Thì rất là mong gặp lại các bạn tại cuộc thi năm nay. Và nếu như có bất kỳ một câu hỏi hay là một quan tâm gì về cuộc thi, hay là về các bạn cần được hỗ trợ về ứng tuyển đại học hoặc là lượng thi chuẩn hóa, thì các bạn hoàn toàn có thể tìm hiểu và kết nối với Spark Web qua các kênh social media của Spark Web cũng như là Bloom Global Education, và là mọi người có thể gửi email cho chị qua địa chỉ là yin@sparklake.com. Thì Sparklake rất là vinh dự khi có thể hỗ trợ các bạn. Thì xin cảm ơn mọi người đã tham gia workshop ngày hôm nay. Yeah, just thanks everyone for joining us today and remind them to take part in our contest this year. Yeah, so I think that's everything for the event today. So yeah, good night everyone and have a great Friday in the America. Yeah, right.
Thank you. Everyone take care. Stay healthy. And thanks so much again for your time today. We're excited to see what you create.
Thank you and
Thank
see you
you.
later.
Okay, see you. Bye-bye.
Bye bye. See you.